You ever look at the human race and wonder, whose idea was this?
You're next, Susan!
How did you know my name?
I created you.
Anyway,
The lore piece stating that humanity was created by the Old Ones is from the Necron 3rd Edition Codex all the way back in 2002, so I'm not sure how canon it is anymore, but hey, let's go with it for the sake of the video. And the video is what it says on the tin. Why would the Old Ones make humans at all? Assuming humans were one of those races first seeded on Earth during the War in Heaven. The later stage, that is, after the biotransference, because that's when the Old Ones made races like the Eldar and the Krork, who would eventually devolve into the orcs we know today. But you can evolve into a subscriber by hitting the button down below and hitting the bell icon to never miss an upload. Aha! Now, humanity in its form was not made by the Old Ones as it is. It's not like Adam and Eve. What happened was, the first smatterings of primate life that would eventually evolve into humans, a sort of missing link, was seeded on Earth by them many millions of years ago. Now, knowing this, it might seem weird to think humanity had any purpose at all rather than just another species they created, but I for one like to think humanity is special. It must be remembered, the War in Heaven lasted millions of years. With that in mind, and we can make fun of the Old Ones all we like for their failings, we must remember that they were very clever, and it would stand to reason that they would have some races in the backline in case of emergencies if those other races possibly failed, if they needed some more backup, or just any myriad of reasons. Humanity, I think, was a contingency plan by the Old Ones, and it had 3 main purposes by their designs. 2 more understandable ones, and a 3rd more sinister one, which I will get into later. First and foremost, let's look at the reasoning for why the Eldari and the Krork, now known as the Orcs, were created at all. The Eldari were a highly psychoactive race that were used to fight alongside the Old Ones almost as like a junior partner. They were sort of the Old Ones' favorites. They were the teacher's pet of the group. They could use the webway, they could use psychic powers similar to the Old Ones, they could create almost anything with Wraithbone, just very effective overall, sort of the main line. Krorks, on the other hand, were made afterward. They were very strong, very brutal, and, while not super psychically active, had ingrained knowledge on certain fighting abilities and certain technologies within them, similar to how orcs nowadays just sort of inherently know how to make a lot of their weapons. It should also be noted, Krork armor is reported to almost be like Space Marine armor, better even, and a lot of them could get up to 12 feet tall. They were incredibly powerful. So, if Eldar were the mainline troops, and Krorks were like an armor division meant to punch holes and really be brutal, humans were more like auxiliaries, or, in a more accurate term, cannon fodder. See, if the war kept dragging on for more and more millions upon millions of years, like the Old Ones likely would have expected, because they didn't plan to lose, of course, they had beat them already, this is just going to be a longer, harder war, they would need troops they could call on to rapidly fill the gaps in the line. That being humans, because humans breed and reproduce very quickly, and unfortunate to say, our lives are cheap. Hell, even the Imperium acknowledges that our lives are cheap. This theory of humanity being sort of the attrition contingency is also backed up by humanity's ability for production. I believe humans were also meant to be, alongside auxiliaries, as the engines of production for a longer, more protracted, and even more consuming conflict. The human ability to effectively swarm a new planet, start shooting up hive cities, and just spread everywhere, building things so fast, is acknowledged even by the Eldar all the way during the Horus Heresy. Let's say it got to that point where the Old Ones needed to look back at their monkey race that they seeded on some planet in the galactic south and say, hey, we need 20 billion troops to plug gaps in the line, we're taking losses. We could say, hey, here's 30 billion and all the ships we could ever muster just for you, just for this conflict. But the problem is, that's asking a lot of any race, especially one that's gonna see catastrophic losses in a war fought by beings way beyond them and not receive any of the real glory because they're just seen as a lesser race. You are asking a lot. This is where one of humanity's greatest powers and also greatest weaknesses comes into play. The power of faith. To start throwing lives into a meat grinder conflict that predates your entire race, and just start pumping out ships and devote your existence to this war that doesn't affect you just because you were told you should, takes an immense amount of faith. And this is proven to be time and again something humans are predisposed to inherently. The human power of faith drives them to incredible feats. The Eldar acknowledge this, even the Tau acknowledge this, as one of the most terrifying things about humans. The power to get zealous and just hurl yourself into a conflict because you have faith in it. You have faith in who you're fighting alongside. It's a uniquely human thing. If I actually recall correctly, and please somebody find the source for this, I did read it somewhere, Commander Farsight himself has stated that humans' faith is their best tool. They will just throw themselves into things wholeheartedly, but a human whose faith has been betrayed or broken are some of the most dangerous creatures, because they have nothing to lose and will only have faith for and fight for themselves. They will be the most depraved and dangerous people. Like it or not, the word bearers were right. You cannot separate faith from man in 40K. Even humans in the atheistic Tau Empire are beginning to manifest a warp god that people are just generally calling Tauva in that near area of warp space, because they simply can't help it. It is like an ingrained biological thing. It's like Eldar being psychoactive. You just can't get it out of them. I believe the purpose for this, deliberately, would be to create a race that will throw themselves in as disposable auxiliaries and just pump themselves into producing more and colonizing more and more to supply this war effort for beings they would likely look up to as their gods and creators. It's quite grim, yes, but if a war was going to go on that long, it would get to that desperate point. I think it also does explain why humans and Eldar look so very similar, because maybe the old ones used some of the Eldari biological template when they started laying the groundwork for what humans would grow into, and it also explains why humans are one of the most psi-active races in the galaxy. All in all, I think it's an interesting theory, and I think you guys can see where I'm going, right? But there's also a darker theory as to what humans were created for, and I think this one's interesting. I believe humans were also meant to serve as the ultimate check and balance against the other races of the old ones. To, if need be, destroy them and replace them. Now, for a myriad of reasons, I cannot imagine the Crook were able to breed unchecked in the same way the orcs of today are. I think that's a really new development in their biology, hence why humanity would stand a chance. Our ability to sort of press them out by consuming galactic resources that they would need and defeating them through weight of numbers. It's kind of what we do even in the current setting in 40K. Hey, joke about Soviet tactics all you want. If the old ones we would probably have a lot of faith towards told us, destroy the Crook, we would. That's part of what human faith does. It lets you turn on people you used to fight beside because you have faith that that's what you're supposed to do. And when you want to talk about how humanity would contend with the Eldar, it gets even weirder and more interesting. You see, the Eldari have stated in their lore that they beat humanity at their peak, that humanity, with their unliving machines, fought against the Eldari at their peak and lost. So, barring that breeding and reproduction advantage, how could humans really stand a chance against the Eldar? Well, it's because of one simple reason. Humanity is the only species in the galaxy with naturally occurring instances of the pariah gene. Like, a lot of races have psychers, even orcs have psychers, but only humans have pariahs? It just seems really specific to me. And even Eldar, who balk at Space Marines and even some of the Primarchs, have to acknowledge that blanks are terrifying, genuinely horrifying to them because it messes with everything about them. Like, even their technology, like Wraithbone is solidified warp energy. It needs that sort of base psychoactive activity to function, repair itself, just do what it has to do. In the presence of a blank, Eldar's war gear will start to degrade. Their tanks won't work as well, their systems won't work as well, their ability to sense the world around them will not work as well, Farseers cannot detect them. It's like this menacing hole in reality. From the 3rd edition Assassin's Codex, here's an excerpt by Eldrad Ulthran himself showing just how Eldar feel and fear Null Psychers.
He is a void in the skein of time, a no-thing upon reality. The rune of oblivion is his sign. The rune of ending is his destiny. My oblivion. My ending. It is a creature of utter abhorrence, of near unspeakable horror to me. Only the humans could spawn such a creature. So debased are they, so lacking in breeding. Yet even they, as crude and as blind as they are, can see this creature, this thing, for what it truly is, though they have no real understanding of its inexistence. I know more about this alien fiend than they do. I know why it is a soulless monstrosity, for I have spoken to the solitaires, who know so well about such things. About the stealing of spirits from bodies that yet live on. It is unnatural. It is not of the chaos that binds all things together. It has no life in the other world. It has no existence except in the physical. It is a dead thing that thinks and breathes, a most hideous abomination. Even the humans who tolerate the stench and squalor of their own kind cannot bear this monster. Ungifted as they are, their latent psychic powers, of which they understand so little, warn them of the danger it poses. Their skin crawls with nameless dread. Their stomach churns with a subconscious loathing. Yet this is but a slight reaction compared to the disgust I feel when I consider its non-existence. They try to control it with their clumsy technology, using devices which they barely comprehend to guard others against the hungering maw which serves as its spirit. To even consider harnessing such an unpleasant freak of creation is to invite disaster. I would laugh at the irony of it, were it not so offensive. The humans will hunt and kill those with the gift, fearing for their safety, when their true nemesis, the real creature which will be their doom, is nurtured upon their bosom. How human that is. This thing stalks me now, and I who have seen the birth of stars and the death of galaxies, I am afraid.
If Eldrad Ulthran himself is afraid of something, yeah, I think it's safe to say there's a credible threat there. And I also want to address one other thing. He mentions solitaires in this spiel. Solitaires are not blanks. There's a common misconception that solitaires are the only Eldari blanks. They're not. They're not necessarily soulless because their souls are claimed by Slaanesh, but they don't have the pariah gene and they don't project that negative psyker aura. We can see that in some books that feature them heavily, like the Path of the Dark Eldar series or the Mask of Vile novella, which I highly recommend. But for an Eldar to physically be close, like close to something that exhibits that null field, is literally lethal. And that comes in another passage from the book Atlas Infernal. Now for context, the Atlas Infernal is a book made by the Imperium and possibly even the Emperor himself that is a living, ever-changing map of the Webway. The pages are made of the stretched skin of Sisters of Silence, who are very powerful blanks themselves, and it has veins and blood in it that creates an ever-moving roadmap that lets people find the way around. The Eldar actually managed to steal the book and have it kept in the Black Library. An Inquisitor named Bronislaw Savak actually stole it when they imprisoned him in the Black Library. It's a long story, Ahriman is involved and all that, but when he has it, and at the very end of the book, a troop of Harlequins who have been hunting him for the entire book come after him, finally cornering him to get it. And what he does is throw the book at him. "Is this what you came for, Harlequin?" Savak whispered. In the Inquisitor's hands, held at his chest, was the Atlas Infernal. The gold, lightweight armor of its casket covers open, its pump spine sighing rhythmically. The parchment-stretched flesh of the Sisters of Silence on display. The Black Soul's ancient life blood, coursing through the ever-changing labyrinth of arteries, veins, and capillaries, winding through the pages. Screams. Everywhere. Eldritch and involuntary. The Witchblade clattered to the hull and smoldered. The Shadowseer was gone. Savak span around, with the antique Imperial tome held out in front of him. The Shadowseer was on the floor, repelled like a demon from an icon of faith, writhing and squirming away from the Inquisitor, unsuccessfully. As Savak approached, he looked about. The troop had all been closing and had all been stunned by the Inquisitor's gambit. The Death Jester was doubled over, rich red gore sputtering through the teeth of his skull face and onto the armor plating. The half-mask stumbled about the edge of the hull by the ether vein, gauntlets at her temples, and Riverblade and Fist Spike crossed above her head. Whether by accident or design, she slipped from the hull and fell off the side of the mail scythe, tumbling past the Rogue Trader's cannon batteries and through the vast emptiness beneath the ship. The Great Harlequin was staggering at him, plume bouncing wildly, and slender plasma pistols clutched in each quaking hand. The troop leader dropped the weapons and hit the metal hull with about as little grace as Savak had ever witnessed an Eldar exhibit. Beaten and soul-scorched by the null sphere of the psychic blankness the pages of the Atlas Infernal radiated, the Great Harlequin and the Death Jester phase field jumped from the danger. Vespasi Han was beyond such survival instincts. His burnt-out mind could find no other expression of this than clawing at his mirror mask. Savak knelt down with the Atlas Infernal beside the inflicted alien.
How does it feel, Harlequin? Fear?
Savak put to the Shadow Seer.
Listen and listen well. I will not be a pawn in some foreseen game of destiny arranged by a visionary farseer of your race. That's his path. My path is my own. I will stop Azek Armin of the Thousand Suns, whether I am destined to do so or not. The High Inquisitor watched the Shadow Seer scratch at the claps on his faceplate, gore bubbling and frothing up from behind it and running down the silvery surface of the mirror mask. It's over, Harlequin,
Savak told the dying Xeno.
I don't want to see your face. You will always be just a mask to me.
Yeah, holy shit. Secret weapon against the Eldar indeed. Okay, now I know that's a little bit cheap because the book is specifically made out of a bunch of Sisters of Silence. It's like an extremely powerful null artifact item thing, but still, Jesus. This is not some random Eldar, by the way, either. That is a Harlequin Shadow Seer. The Harlequins are some of the most dangerous Eldar, and an entire troop of them was just wiped the fuck out by this guy, doing one move. The Witchblade the Shadow Seer was carrying is described as smoldering. The thing literally starts going critical. Their war gear starts to literally break down. They lose all composure. It is the perfect tool to use against the Eldar if you really wanted to get rid of them, and only humanity has it. With the proper guidance and tools of the old ones at our disposal, if it had come to that, yeah, I do believe they could have been the tool that would have brought the Eldari to heel or even just wiped them out, if even one Calexis assassin is enough to put the fear of the Emperor in Eldrad Ulthran. For these reasons, I believe that was humanity's backup contingency purpose, to be the secret weapon against the Eldar if they should ever turn on the old ones, in the same way the Necron had turned on the Catan. But what do you guys think? Do you guys agree with me on this? Do you guys even think the old ones created humans at all? That's a pretty good question to ask if I'm being honest. Or am I just completely wrong? I'd love to hear your take in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.